latest International Monetary Fund (IMF) report on Guyana validates the government's efforts. So says Minister of Finance Winston Jordan. On this program, we take a closer look at the report and its implications for Guyana and how the economy is expanding and is projected to continue this trend for years to come.
Are you ready to embark on a truly epic adventure to an undiscovered corner of South America, where some of the most spectacular natural attractions are unveiled within a beautifully diverse landscape? From the wetlands and savannas to the ancient mountains, magnificent waterways and lush enriching rainforest, which provide a vast playground for some of the most exotic and breathtaking creatures on the planet, including many of the world's giant species. This untouched land of mystery and wonder serves up an exclusive experience for travelers. So are you ready for a new, awe-inspiring adventure? Welcome back to nature. Welcome to Guyana.
The IMF is International Monetary Fund. That's what their acronym stands for, and they're part of what are called the Bretton Woods institutions, because so named after Bretton Woods, which is a town in New Hampshire, and they were established in the post-World War II to bring stability to the international economy. And the sister institution is the World Bank, and they were established around the same time to help in the reconstruction of economies that were destroyed in Europe. The IMF has evolved over time to take into account all those countries that were colonies and became countries as they became independent. So the IMF now roughly has about 190-something members. One of their articles was called Article 4, and that article provides for consultations by the IMF team for every single member who is a member of the IMF, annual consultations. It can be more frequent or less frequent, but annual consultations where a fund team will come to a country and examine economic and other progress. Indeed, it used to be substantially on the economy and on the monetary, because after all, that's what the IMF was originally set up for, monetary stability, exchange rate, and so on. But over time, it has evolved into significantly other areas to do with issues such as poverty, governance, women, and so on. So the IMF has really come of age, so to speak. They are necessary. They are internationally well known. And once you get the stamp of approval from the IMF, all donors, bilateral and other multilateral, will look at that as a means. It's like getting a AAA rating. Okay, if you got a AAA rating, you can go to the markets and borrow at cheaper rates. If you don't have a AAA rating, then the rates, you're deemed to be a risky client. And if they're going to lend you, it's going to reflect the risk. So your interest rate will be higher than mine if I have a AAA. So once you get this so-called stamp of approval from the IMF, then bilateral and international donors will see that as an indication of progress and development in the economy. So the IMF was here for a 2-week period, the regular team, and then later on in the mission they were joined by 2 top officials from the IMF, Mr. Alexander Tombini, who's our executive director. He's actually the executive director for Brazil, right? And that ED always comes from Brazil, but we happen to be in that constituency along with Trinidad and some other countries. And then also we were joined by Mr. Hussein, who's the deputy director of the Western Hemisphere Department, quite a fairly high level official in the IMF. And together, they also looked at the state of the economy and in other areas, such like anti-money laundering, what we are doing on that front. They looked at governance, constitutional reform, the workings of the National Assembly, the workings of the Integrity Commission, and so on. But principally, they looked at the economy, the various aspects of the economy, growth, inflation, exchange rate, the public finances, public corporations, and so forth. And having looked at all that over the 2-week period, they concluded that Guyana's economy is progressing well prior to us achieving force oil. Our growth of 4.1% last year was the highest since 2014. 4.1%, the highest since 2014. And since we have come into 2015, contrary to all the naysayers and so on, we have grown every year. It's just that this is the highest of the growth that we have achieved since 2015. And all this has been done. You can feel the effects of a 4.1% growth in the economy.
Minister Jordan says money is flowing into the country.
Just a couple of weeks ago, you had Carnival in Guyana. And over that 1 week, there wasn't a single complaint about money not flowing and so on. Everybody was smiling, from the cook shop, the side vendor, the taxi driver, everybody, even the private sector was moved to indicate that indeed things were happening in the economy. This trend will continue as we approach force oil.
In its detailed statement, the IMF commended Guyana for putting its Natural Resources Fund into motion.
No report, however rosy, will not be without its cautions and so forth. And so we were cautioned in a couple of areas, or pointed some areas where we could improve or tinker with some parts of it, and that will give us better returns. They were in high praise for our Natural Resource Fund, which is our sovereign wealth fund, and the fiscal rule, the withdrawal rule that will allow us to draw funds from the NRF into the consolidated fund and to finance development. As you know, we have indicated that the Green State Development Strategy is our blueprint, Vision 2040, and we will be using our resources to make certain that the outcomes as set out in the Green State Development Strategy can be achieved. And that is why we look forward to our next 5 years, so we can build on the progress that we have done in this Force 5. Well, the Natural Resource Fund is what others will call the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And it has been designed to achieve 3 broad objectives. One is to save money for a rainy day, what we call intergenerational. All right, so the resources we are using today, we can't consume all, right? We have to save some for generations to come. 2 is to deal with stability issues. You know, oil prices, we don't control oil prices. So we are the mercy of the international market. So today it's up, tomorrow it's down. Indeed, I heard, for example, like gold. Gold prices are trending upwards finally after a long period. And in that regard, you get more revenues now. The problem about that is that if you plan your development based on the rising revenues, when the prices fall, you're likely to be in serious trouble. So we're saving some also to stabilize development, so you don't have to close down all these projects that you would have started, because as we say, the price has bottomed out, which means it has been lowered. So you could draw on the fund to for stability. And the last part has to do with developmental, which is in the context of the Green State Development Strategy, we will be setting aside monies to deal with infrastructure issues, human development issues, and other issues of concern to our society. So, and that monies will be, so let me back up a little bit. So all monies intended for the Natural Resources Fund from our petroleum and gas resources will go directly to the Natural Resource Fund. It won't be touched by the human hand. right? It gets straight into the natural resource fund. And the fund is set up with what is called a fiscal rule or a withdrawal rule that determines how much can be withdrawn at any one time. Once that is determined and once it's approved by the parliament. So it's not a case where the government can just sit down and say, oh, we can take 50 million out of it or 200 million out of it. There's a rule. And regardless that there's a rule, parliament still has to approve the withdrawal of that amount. Once that approval is made, the withdrawal of that amount goes into the consolidated fund. Okay? And specifically, it has to, the projects that will use that funding have to be targeted. In other words, the parliament has to approve the projects that will use those funds. So again, you can't wake up overnight and you went into some political district and they say they want three cows and 4 horses, and then you run to the natural resource fund and you draw the money.
The fund will not be managed by any one person or body, but rather by a broad-based committee.
This fund will be managed by different committees. We have the macroeconomic committee that will be setting the targets and so forth, and the Bank of Guyana, with assistance, will be responsible for managing the thing. There's a big oversight committee, 22 members, drawn from all strata of the society, who will be oversighting the fund to make certain that everything is done above board, and to also provide reports on what they feel that could be done better about the fund. 22 members across the society, and including representatives from all 10 regions. Well, the importance was that, one, we wanted not to make the same mistakes as others who enjoyed oil or similar wealth derived from whatever resource. One mistake we ourselves made in Guyana is that particularly our mining products, bauxite, gold, and our agricultural product, sugar, that were subjected at any one time to premium prices, which is prices well above world market prices. Instead of saving some for a rainy day, we ate all out. We ate all out. And when I say that, I mean today you look at sugar. Had we saved part of the premium price that we were receiving from the European Union for as long as 1972, when the Georgetown Agreement came in, to up to when they terminated the price, which would have been, I would say, over 45 years or thereabout, or close to 45 years, we would have had a sizable amount now in our sovereign wealth fund that we could have tapped into to help out the sugar industry. The same goes for gold. At one time, prices for gold were up at $1,900 US. But where is the evidence that we've been able to save for that? Bauxite. At one time, we controlled 90% of the market for calcined bauxite at an extremely super price. Where is it when the bauxite industry fell into trouble? We had ate out all the money. We had consumed it all. So learning from those mistakes, we decided up front, and it was the president who, no less than the president, who was adamant that we have a natural resource fund in place before oil, the first drop of oil.
The Minister of Finance assures the nation that the government has an effective management plan in place.
And he advised that we put together a green paper. This we did, we had a lot of discussions on and so forth. We took many of those discussions on board. We had leading experts in the world come here, we went there, and so on. A long process. And finally, we got what we got into the National Assembly in January of this year. It's rather unfortunate that the opposition, in their typical fashion, never turned up to be part of the debate. But our economy cannot come to a standstill because one petulant party doesn't want to dance or participate. Okay? We went ahead, and the good thing is we have had kudos all around for the type of bill that we have passed. Mr. Jagdeo, in his usual style, he told the fund that he will scrap it. Now, I didn't know he was running for president, but he will scrap it. if his government, if the PPP got back into power, which was a rather unfortunate, I understand, thing to be heard, because I heard there were exchanges on it. I know the private sector. We met the private sector, I think a month or two ago, on their participation on the management of the sovereign wealth fund. We exchanged views on it. I cannot say that there was a negative view on how we are going to manage that fund. Okay, Mr. Jagro's preference is for all this money to go in the consolidated fund, a typical black hole, because as people know, the consolidated fund is an all-embracing fund. When monies get into the consol fund, it's fungible. It's not earmarked for any particular thing. Once monies are in there, it's fungible, which means it can fund any expenditure, any eligible expenditure of the government. And putting monies in there and then trying to get it out back to the Natural Resource Fund has been tried by a couple of other countries with very little positive effect. So I think we have a more than credible way of making certain that monies are saved. And beyond politicking by the opposition leader, I would suggest that there will be a lot of noise if any attempt is made to remove some of the stringencies, or any of the stringencies that we have on the monies going into and coming out of the Natural Resource Fund. Prior to 2015, getting information out of the government was worse than pulling an eye tooth, and you know how hard that can be. In fact, at one time things had got so bad that to get even weather information, which will obviously come out from the Hydromet office, right? They had to get clearance from the office of the president just to give out Hydromet data. And that is how bad it was in terms of getting information from the last government. When I came to this job here as a professional economist and financier, knowing the value of information, and knowing from someone who attended the University of Guyana and how hard it was getting him to get financial information, I decided to put an end to that. The average housewife or worker could expect better payment, and if that economy is growing in the context of low inflation, they could expect stable prices and so on. So for the average housewife, we would look at how much additional income they can get and what prices they are facing in the market, so to speak. For the children also, the housewife and the whole household, it is opportunities as to whether they are getting increased allowances, if they do get increased allowances, or if their meal that they're taking reflects the fact that more income is coming into the country.
Guyana's 4.1% gross domestic product growth rate for 2018, validated by international agencies such as the IMF and the United States, was described as solid by Finance Minister Winston Jordan.
It is the first time under this government that we have crossed the threshold 4%. And I think it was a significant achievement for last year.
The minister explained the performance of several sectors such as sugar, forestry, livestock, gold, wholesale and retail trade, and oil and gas related activities contributed to the economy's sterling growth rate.
Do recall, as you would, that our growth had sunk below 3% in 2017. So this was a quite sharp rebound in 2018. And do remember that our growth projection for 2019 is 4.4%. Excuse me. That has not been revised in spite of this performance. We'll try to keep it there, and at the half year, look and see how the sectors are performing, and at that time we'll determine whether we need to revise the growth rate for 2019.
Minister Jordan said he is at one with President David Granger regarding the utterances by the private sector, whose views appear to differ in reality. The building boom, the expansion of Banks DIH Limited, DDL, and high declarations of the bank's profits are to be noted, he explained.
Indeed, some of those who are trying to cast a pall are behind the scenes investing heavily, either singly or in partnership with others. So I totally agree with the president and his assessment of how the economy is being performing.
Minister Jordan further noted that any objective assessment of the local economy would show that it is one on the move and improving.
The need for financial transparency and accountability has been one of the coalition government's mantras. According to Finance Minister Winston Jordan, with or without laws to govern this, the administration has ensured that its spending was evident to the population.
Minister Jordan, discussing the recently released IMF report, noted it gives Guyana more than just positive reviews. The IMF projected a 4.4% growth rate in Guyana's economy ahead of oil production in 2020. It said that real GDP grew by 4.1% in 2018, up from 2.1% in 2017. However, aside from actual figures, the IMF praised government's planning and management.
When you produce a report August the 30th, the parliament is shut down. It will not open back until the 10th of October, by which time, when it gets to the parliament on the 10th of October, it is of little or no use to all the users of it. The information is dated and everything else. I decided in-house that we must get this report out before Parliament shuts down on August the 10th. And happily, it has been done. Since we came into power, I think it's only once we didn't meet August the 10th, simply because we came in late in 2015. But thereafterwards, we have been producing reports August the 10th, before August the 10th.
The finance minister says his ministry went further in ensuring monthly financial reports are available to the public. He says, though there have been hiccups, this will be rectified soon.
We caused to be put on our website monthly reports on the performance of the economy. Yes, we haven't been able to complete it of late because we have a very small staff here. Plus, we had some staff challenges, but that is the case, but we are going to restart it. It became a hit with university students, with people overseas, and so on. We've had a lot of complaints from the private sector why we have stopped it and so on. We haven't stopped it. We just don't have the bodies to do it, but we are going to restart it shortly.
The Finance Ministry has also been producing a public debt report, which they are not mandated to do.
We are producing a debt report. A debt report, a public debt report. Nobody asks us to do it. It is no law that requires us to do it. But not only have we produced it, we have laid it in the National Assembly every single year.
As the government pushes ahead with measures to increase transparency and accountability to ensure businesses across the entire spectrum of the private sector are in keeping with international best practices and norms. The Financial Intelligence Unit created by the government is the leading agency tasked with overseeing this process. The FIU's summarized 2018's annual report was recently handed over to the Finance Minister. It offered a comprehensive review of its activities for the past year.
FIU Director Matthew Landevine said the report, which also contains the agency's certified 2018 financial statements by the Auditor General's Office, provides a summary of activities conducted.
As it strives to execute its mandate of working with all local and international stakeholders in protecting the integrity of the local and international financial system from money launderers and those trying to use our system to finance terrorism and proliferation.
The FIU has signed a Memorandum of Understanding with 10 regional counterparts. This has resulted in the sharing of information for the investigation of several money laundering cases. Increased training and outreach sessions were also conducted to increase awareness of the FIU. He noted that MOUs were also signed with FIU counterparts in Barbados and Jamaica.
We were able to use these MOUs in a couple of money laundering investigations already, so the importance of these MOUs are being seen and the benefits are being realized. We now have MOUs with approximately 10 FIUs in the region, and these MOUs are even more important as we continue to strive towards having Guyana accepted as a member of the Egmont Group of International FIUs.
Minister Jordan, describing the report as the first of its kind received by him, said it attests to the coalition government's push to increase transparency and accountability.
Since our entry into office, we have produced reports as required by law and reports that are not even required by law. Even as we speak, we are working on the half-year report, or mid-year report, as some of you would like to call it. And as you know, we have an unenviable record of getting that report into the National Assembly before it goes into recess, even though the law requires us to have it available by the 28th of August of each year.
The reports will be laid before the National Assembly and made available for public perusal.
The International Monetary Fund projects a 4.4% growth in Guyana's economy this year. But how do you, the consumer, benefit from this? In this segment, we examine what this means for the average Guyanese.
Once the economy is growing, the average housewife or worker could expect better payment. And if that economy is growing in the context of low inflation, they could expect stable prices.
Re-emphasizing that the IMF report also showed steady growth since 2015 when the current coalition administration took office, Minister Jordan noted the recently held Independence Carnival as another clear example of economic growth and money trickling down.
You can feel the effects of a 4.1% growth in the economy. Just a couple of weeks ago, you had Carnival in Guyana, and over that 1 week, there wasn't a single complaint about money not flowing and so on. Everybody was smiling, from the cook shop, the side vendor, the taxi driver, everybody, even the private sector was moved to indicate that indeed things were happening in the economy.
The minister says government is also heeding the recommendations of the report to ensure it stays the path of economic stability.
No report, however rosy, will not be without its cautions and so forth. And so we were cautioned in a couple of areas, or pointed to some areas where we could improve or tinker with some parts of it, and that will give us better returns. They were in high praise for our Natural Resource Fund, which is our sovereign wealth fund, and the fiscal rule, the withdrawal rule that will allow us to draw funds from the NRF into the consolidated fund and to finance development.
A key component of the achievement of a nation's economic goals is the preparation of its national budget. This can only be as effective as those who are instrumental in its planning and preparation. According to the Minister of Finance, Winston Jordan, ministries and agencies' heads of budget departments must set the example in terms of leadership.
Addressing stakeholders during the launch of the 2020 Budget Sensitization and Training Session at the Artichon Conference Center, Lilindale, the internationally trained economist reminded that budget preparation had nothing to do with politics.
There is a preparation stage within the budget agencies, consideration by the Ministry of Finance at the budget hearings, proposals to Cabinet, then proposals to Parliament, followed by the budget speech, parliamentary debate and consideration of the estimates. After passage of the budget, we move to the implementation of the budget, which includes monitoring and evaluation to ensure that performance is being tracked.
The move by some opposition politicians and wannabe politicians to oppose the ongoing preparations and whip up hysteria and confusion with dissemination of fake news were scare tactics, according to the finance minister. These, the minister noted, were designed to incite a Pavlovian response.
We have several persons in the business community, civil society, and other organizations who exhibit this type of behavior, an automatic response conditioned by the signal from their master to react in a now familiar manner. So like their master, they trot out the view that we shall not start budget preparation because elections are due, and that insofar that there is a government, it is only a caretaker government. Let it be known that the Constitution does not provide for a caretaker government. Parliament has not been dissolved. It is still in session. And this government, in spite of the successful passage of the no confidence motion, still retains a majority. Indeed, it was only last night that someone called me from the diaspora saying to me, why y'all don't get somebody from the government side to bring a confidence motion, which is what the Constitution talks about. The Constitution does not talk about a no confidence motion. It talks about a confidence motion. So he was telling me.
The recent kudos given by international agencies, including the Caribbean Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the rating of the United States-based NASDAQ, which described Guyana as the fastest growing economy internationally, were causes to celebrate and build on.
We have to take this positive and turn it into income, turn it into wealth, turn it into growth, turn it into economic development. So we, our children, generations to come, can benefit. We have to stop burning up our energies in negativism.
You have been watching InfoHub in Depth. Join us again next time. Goodbye.